Hi there, it's Samantha, and welcome back to Wife Stewardship Podcast. I am so excited. Today, we're going to go into the introduction of the Book of Ruth. It is by the grace of God that we have completed our journey through the Book of Esther. Throughout that study, we discovered that even when God's name is never mentioned, His hand is evident on every page. We learned that God is sovereign over kings, kingdoms, circumstances, and every detail of our lives. We saw His justice, His mercy, His providence, and His faithfulness. Today, we begin another beautiful journey through the Book of Ruth. Now, although Ruth is one of the shortest books in the Bible, containing only 44 chapters, it is one of the richest demonstrations of God's love, redemption, grace, and divine providence. Many people know Ruth simply as a love story. While there is certainly a beautiful marriage in the book, Ruth is much more than a romance. It is a story of redemption. It is a story of restoration. It is a story of faithful obedience. It is a story of loss that becomes blessing. Most importantly, it is a story that points us to Jesus Christ, our ultimate Redeemer. Now let's talk about who wrote the Book of Ruth. The Bible does not specifically identify the author of Ruth. Jewish traditions attributes the book to the prophet Samuel. While scripture does not confirm this, many scholars do believe that Samuel wrote it because the events occurred during a period of the judges, before the establishment of Israel monarchy. Ultimately, whether Samuel or another inspired writer penned the book, we know that all scripture is given by inspiration of God, which can be found in 2 Timothy, the 3rd chapter, the 16th verse. Now, let's talk when does Ruth take place? The book of Ruth begins with these important words. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled. That's Ruth, the 1st chapter, the 1st verse. This immediately places the story during one of the darkest periods in Israel's history. The book of Judges repeatedly tells us this. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Judges, the 21st chapter, the 25th verse. Israel had fallen into a cycle of sin. They would turn away from God. God would allow oppression. The people would cry out. God would raise up a judge. The nation would experience deliverance. Then the cycle would begin again. Against that dark backdrop, God gives us the story of Ruth. Even during national spiritual decline, God was quietly working through ordinary people to accomplish His extraordinary purposes. Now, why the book of Ruth is important. Ruth teaches us that God works through ordinary people who simply choose to trust Him. Unlike Esther, there are no kings issuing decrees. There are no royal banquets. There are no political conspiracies. Instead, we find a grieving widow, a faithful mother-in-law, a humble farmer, a harvest field. Yet, through these ordinary circumstances, God accomplishes extraordinary things. That should encourage each and every one of us today. Not all of us will stand before kings. Not all of us will have positions of great influence. But every one of us can be faithful where God has placed us. As we study Ruth together, we'll discover several beautiful themes. Redemption. The entire book points towards redemption. Boaz becomes Ruth's kinsman redeemer, providing a beautiful picture of Jesus Christ who redeems us from sin. Faithfulness. Ruth demonstrates remarkable loyalty and faithfulness. Naomi learns that God has not abandoned her. Boaz models integrity, kindness, and godly leadership. Providence. Just as we saw in Esther, God is working behind the scenes. What appears to be a coincidence is actually divine providence. There are no accidents with God. Restoration. Naomi begins the story empty. She ends it full. God specializes in restoring what appears lost. And then there's grace. Ruth was a Moabite. Under normal circumstances, she would have been considered an outsider. Yet God's grace welcomed her into his covenant family. This reminds us that God's plan of redemption has always extended beyond ethnic Israel to all who come to him by faith. Here's a word before we begin. As we study Ruth, I want to encourage you to read slowly. Notice the details. Notice God's timing. Notice the conversations. Notice the decisions. Notice the faithfulness of ordinary people. Most importantly, notice God. Just as in Esther, God is a central character of the book, even though he often works quietly behind the scenes. You may find yourself identifying with Naomi during a season of loss. You may see yourself in Ruth as you choose to follow God into an uncertain future. You may learn from Boaz what godly character and leadership look like. Or perhaps you'll simply be reminded that God is still writing stories of redemption today. The same God who restored Naomi is the same God who redeemed Ruth. The same God who blessed Boaz is the same God that we serve today. As we begin this new journey together, I pray that your heart will be open to what God desires to teach us through the book of Ruth. This is not just the story of one family in Bethlehem. It is the story of a faithful God who never abandons his people. It is the story of redemption that ultimately leads to King David and generations later to Jesus Christ. Join me next week as we begin Ruth chapter 1, where we'll witness the beginning of Naomi's sorrow, Ruth's remarkable faithfulness, and the first steps in one of the greatest redemption stories of all Scripture. Until next time, remember that even when life takes unexpected turns, God is still at work. He is the God of redemption, restoration, and unfailing faithfulness, and he is still writing your story today.